Hi, folks. I'm David Elliot from Lanyon Group, and I'm going to be chatting to Karl today. I was trying to make a bit of a segue from Aflac's experience in Northern Ireland and McDonald's, and I have managed to, hopefully. McDonald's have been, I suppose, an inward investor in McDonald's for 30 years next month, would you believe? In that time, they've 33 restaurants and 3,300 employees, so all the threes there, so been here for quite some time. Karl is Director of Digital for McDonald's and is normally based in England, but has come over here kindly to back home because he grew up and went to school here in Northern Ireland. So one of our own who really has digital DNA running through his veins. So we're going to have a bit of a chat with Karl about his role at McDonald's and the digital evolution of the company over the years, and in particular in the last few months. So rather than me do that, Karl, I think I'll let you. So if you could first of all take us on your journey from Belfast, from growing up here, and to your role at McDonald's as Director of Digital.
Thank you, David. Hope you can hear me okay. So morning, still morning, yes. Great to be here. As I said to the other group, my mum and dad are particularly happy to be here because they get to see their son, which they've only seen twice in the last 18 months. So great to be here and stuff. And what I would also say is I think we're starting to create a bit of a Northern Irish mafia in McDonald's because I'm not the only one in the leadership group. We've got two really important people. We've got Beth Hart, who's the VP of Supply Chain, so that's quite important in these days. She's from Northern Ireland, and then Gráinne Allen, who's Food Director, so she's very important for a business like McDonald's, also from Northern Ireland, so I think we're slightly taken over, but that wasn't the reason why I got the job, I think, at McDonald's, just because I'm come from here. I grew up in Belfast, went to school Methody. Very still close to all my schoolmates from Methody as well. A lot of them in London, obviously. Several still over here, so good to see them. I went to uni in Leicester, did economics, and I think I had no interest in being an accountant. A lot of PwC people here, so apologies for that. But I think what I guess laid the foundations a little bit for me was behavioural economics and the study of kind of nudge behaviour and driving customer behaviour in some way, and that was kind of always rooted in my conscience a little bit, and it's something I was always really interested in. So and it's absolutely part of the kind of work that I'm doing with my team in McDonald's. But I decided I was going to do journalism and PR and stuff. Worked actually at Grayling, big PR agency, Jaguar Land Rover, a few of those. Went via Marston's, big beer and hotel company, so sold beer. Then I went to Domino's as head of digital and CRM there, so I sold pizza. Now I'm at McDonald's and doing this digital role, so I'm selling burgers. So it might be drugs next. I think that's probably the next thing for me. But no, it's a fascinating place working at McDonald's. I joined actually in February last year, so. You can imagine I had a couple of weeks in the business, went to Chicago for a week, met a few people, did a week in a restaurant, and then suddenly the whole world changes. And working but actually weirdly, it kind of was actually the most fortunate time I think to work at McDonald's because obviously, we had to close down a load of restaurants, which we've never done before, and we had systems that that wasn't part of the DNA of how they were built. So we had to close them down. We had to start them back up again. And then I look after, basically, my team look after all our customer-facing digital channels. So, the touch screens, the digital screens you see in restaurants, mobile app, McDelivery, and others. So suddenly you become one of the most important parts of the business because that ultimately were the channels that first opened up. And we've now gone from this business where, digital channels, so that collection of kiosk, mobile, delivery was, 20% of our business is now 60% of our business. These are huge. The business has pivoted so much, and I feel personally very fortunate to have joined at that specific time and be able to hopefully influence it in the right direction.
So you've touched on there. I mean, I'm disappointed you spent a bit of time in PR, and I'm disappointed that you didn't think that's the career for me, given that's what I'm in. Director of Digital it's a great title, and I imagine 10, 20 years ago, that role in McDonald's maybe wasn't quite as prestigious as it is now. Give us an idea about what your role involves and how important it is to the business.
So, as I said, my team basically cover everything that you, as a customer, touches from a digital perspective. My team effectively look after, and it's a tremendously important part. We love an acronym at McDonald's. So, our growth strategy is firmly based on the M, C, and D. So, maximizing our marketing, committing to the core, which is things like chicken, beef, McPlant, all those things. But the D is very firmly rooted on drive-through, digital, and delivery. So, if I'm responsible for two of those things, that's a good place to be. But McDonald's is, I think, really we've only the penny's now dropped a little bit, and we're a proper omni-channel business. We started in Belfast and Bradbury Place there, all those years ago, as a high street a bricks and mortar oriented business, and now we have transformed to say over 60% of our business going through digital channels. That causes us to have to think differently. And it's also informing a hell of a lot of our future plans of what these restaurants are looking like. We've gone through a big journey in that over the last couple of years. You think those touch screens and kiosks, they've only been around for about 5 years, but we're now in this kind of this new change of reimagining what restaurants look like, and we've already a couple of concepts that we've opened up over the last couple of months. And the reason behind that is because we suddenly have this restaurant environment where you've got each restaurant doing 350 delivery orders a day. Then they're doing another 600, 700 drive-through orders. Then they're doing another 500 kiosk orders, and they're all congregating with couriers and customers in this one restaurant space. And I'm sure you've been into McDonald's recently and stuff. It's tough, and it's tough on our crew teams. So that means we have to think about our footprint completely differently. So we're right at the start of what we call we're calling convenience of the future, but or also kind of experience of the future, our next versions of that, to kind of think about, right, what do these restaurant environments look like? How do we support this incredible amount of new capacity that we've got? Those customers haven't just converged into new channels. We've got those customers who've been through drive-through plus are coming in now to order through our digital channels, and we have to serve them better. Our customer satisfaction scores need to be better. Our speed of service needs to be better. We've got to deliver hot food better, and we know we've got work to do in those spaces. So that my role now is all about kind of working with other teams, our restaurant services groups, our ops teams, to basically get that food to those customers, and from the order point through to the fulfillment. And I guess that's what we're focused on at the moment.
That transformation to the digital side of things, how much of that was push and how much was that pull? I mean, as in how much was it demanded by customers that they wanted perhaps to order digitally, to order in maybe a faster way?
Well, I think it's a sit in the fence a bit of both, because I think ultimately a consumer only knows what they know. So you've got to be the agent of change. But I think what I love about working within this market, so we work in QSRs, so quick service restaurants, is it's a leading sector in this space. By its very nature, we're about making sure when you order your food, it's in your hands and you're consuming that as quick as possible. So if you need to do, to make that happen and to improve in that, you need technology to be able to do that. So the whole industry, and obviously being at Domino's as well, a big leader in delivery and so on, is we're right at the forefront of a lot of those kind of aspects and so on. So I think there is that nature of the sector in order to survive and make sure you're still relevant. And for us, we're now the number one delivery operator, obviously the number one restaurant brand. To maintain those standards and stuff and make sure you're ahead, we've got to be thinking forward. So those aspects, but so the consumers are demanding those kind of things. But as a business, we have to recognise that as well. And pivoting to delivery and to digital products just doesn't happen overnight. We have, over the last couple of years with our franchisees, and we're obviously a franchisee business, we've had to invest on the wiring. We wouldn't have been able to deliver that if we hadn't spent over the last 2 years completely invest in our restaurant infrastructure, all the boring stuff, the wires, the big fat pipes. We had a project Fat Pipes, which is about basically getting more bandwidth into our restaurants. A lot of our restaurants had worse network connection than many of your houses would have done, 18 months ago. So, we've had to invest in what we call the core capabilities over the last couple of years. what is really exciting now is we're now in a position where we're going to start really thinking about, well, okay, well, what does that mean for customers? What does that mean for a more connected customer experience? What does it mean for a more consistent experience? Because, again, one of the things that we would be guilty of is, our channels are probably a little bit disparate. They're a bit siloed. Your experience on kiosk might not be exactly the same as through mobile app. It certainly is not the same as your experience through our delivery partners. So a big part of our job is how can we bring these things together? How can we make them more consistent, more personalized? We talk about our known customer relationships. So, before when I started the business, we had 6 million known customer relationships. So people we can connect with, and we had deep-rooted information about their behaviours, likes, and interests. We now have 13.2 million of those, and those customers are worth more to us. They're worth about 60 quid more per customer per year than those aren't in those. So we've got to nurture those things, and we've got to make sure that those customers, and because this is what they want, is whether you're going through a drive-through or going through or ordering through mobile, that it's consistent. So that is requiring us to think a little bit more on that one. And really our end-to-end experience is what we're really focused on. So there's some really exciting stuff coming, basically.
Anyone that's been into a restaurant recently, or certainly in the last couple of years, will have seen that journey start a few years ago, and we've seen the kiosks pop up in the stores. How much did the pandemic then accelerate that journey? Because it's certainly changed a lot of businesses, and McDonald's is no exception.
Yeah, said it kind of before and stuff. So if you looked at you look at all our fulfillment channels. So delivery was about 10% of our business 2 years ago. It's now just under 25%. So it's now a 1.2 billion pound business on its own. That's like the size of Domino's and size of Greg's at this point. So that's obviously pivoted massively. Mobile for us has been a harder burn for us. Actually, we've had a lot of work to do on platform, but that was about 0.2% of our business 2 years ago. It's now just under 6%. That will be 10% of our business next year. So that's going to be a £1 billion business on its own as well. And then the kiosk journeys that hasn't shown any sign of dropping off. So again, that completes the three parts of our digital piece. But obviously, with a return to lessening restrictions and people coming back into restaurants, those volumes have started to come up as well. And it's a super convenient, well loved part of our customer journey. So as I said, we were 20% of those combined. We're about 20% of our business. 2 years ago, it's 60%. Now. So in 2 years, it's quite phenomenal. And I think there's an element of luck behind that. We're not going to dismiss that investment that we did. The timing we got weirdly really right, but obviously that wasn't planned. Nobody plans for a pandemic, But we were in the A1 position, I guess. When we reopened back there, very fortunate to do that. Very fortunate we had the foresight of our franchisees and others to invest in that, and we were able to deliver against that. And we've had, it's been an incredible year for us so far this year.
And if you've got more deliveries, you've got more couriers, you've got more people going through the drive-through, how does that change the way that the restaurant operates? Because it's a completely different way that it maybe operated 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think one of the big challenges we've got is that courier and customer kind of convergence in our service areas and stuff has just made that really, really difficult. So there's a couple of things we're obviously looking at that, and so we take the delivery piece. So we've opened more dedicated courier collection areas in a lot of our restaurants, and I think that will continue. We're working with our delivery partners to do things like dynamic demand management. So we're building systems with them that look at how can we spread capacity around that delivery order better with restaurants that are close in the locality. So often we find certain restaurants are massive delivery capacity, but the ability to dynamically move that to another restaurant close by that can service that, and still get your food hotter is a good thing. So that's stuff that we're pioneering with Just Eat that no other business has done just yet. So things like that. And then we're thinking about obviously that customer journey piece. So we mobile order collect points to encourage more people to kind of order by mobile and pre-order in advance. Again, takes the pinch point away at kiosk and front counter. we're removing front counter at a lot of places now, and we're putting back customer experience leads and just letting that happen with kiosks and with mobile as well. So expanding our drive-through capacity, express lane drive-throughs is something that will come very soon. We're looking at voice oriented, so a lot of trying to take away that pinch point in restaurant order. If that can be one step removed and it becomes a bit more fulfillment, that's really important to us. But I think one of the things that I'm quite passionate about as well is we've got to make sure we create an atmosphere. We arguably in a couple of our tests we're a bit clinical, and some can be quite clinical. These can feel quite transactional, and that's not what McDonald's is about. I'm sure many of you in here will grow up go into doing kids parties in your high street restaurants and all that kind of stuff, and people want to see the kitchen, they want to see their food being prepared, and we need to make sure we still retain that real kind of that sentiment, that feeling in that restaurant environment going forward, or else I think a very transactional experience isn't what we want to get to, and digital could go that far if we let it happen.
And how do you do that? Because that's so difficult to, as you say, it's a transactional digital experience where you could get away without having to speak to anybody, but to retain that personality, to retain the view of the kitchen, that's kind of difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy in some senses because obviously you go up your kitchen and you just construct your footprint in that way. But I think for us again is what we again are trying to do an awful lot of work on is really understand the occasions that are driving that McDonald's purchase and just make sure that we're channeling customers based on the right channel for that specific need and want. So an occasion where a mum with their kids just wants to get in and get out and get back home because they've got screaming kids in the car, they want to have as less contact points as possible. They want that food in their hands. But if you're on a high street and you're out shopping with your mates, you might want to sit in there and actually feel, touch, feel, see, smell the experience a little bit more. So I think what we'll do a little bit more of is think about making sure we're channeling the right channel for those occasions and making that super clear to customers. So I think we can be a bit confusing at times. But for certain restaurants, particularly in city centres and high streets or regional town centres, is actually make it feel a little bit more like bring back the kind of the restaurant experience, and dial up the dine-in elements. Not many people actually know that we do table service through mobile. But it's our customers love it. Why wouldn't you go and sit down there, plug your mobile up, and then your food's delivered in 30 seconds? Or 60, obviously not 30 seconds. Maybe it's pushing it a little bit harder, but it's those things I think we need to dial up. So depending on what the usage is for that restaurant, depending on the customer's occasion, just making sure we've got that really nailed down. If that makes sense.
I'm sure there's some people working at McDonald's right now going 30 seconds might be a little bit of a push, but
Yeah, don't tell them that.
Give it
Put enough pressure on them as it is, So bless them.
Give it a lash.
Had a hard 18 months.
It's interesting. Your job, as much as being all over technology, all over the digitalization side of it, is nearly as much about getting inside the head of the customer and trying to, not just one customer, a customer that comes from many different scenarios and many different backgrounds. You need to get inside their head, figure out what they want, when they want it, and where they want it.
Yeah, and I talked about that kind of known customer relationship, as we call it. So suddenly we've got twice as many, more than that, now that we've got good solid behavioural information on that customer. It's a really hard one for us to navigate here because, as many of you all know, that landscape is changing so enormously around legislation, and obviously we're also impacted with HFSS, and that's going to change the game in terms of how and when we can communicate with customers. So that knowing relationship is going to be really, really critical for us. So building those platforms up and keeping that connection point, because we're not going to be able to talk to many people on TV or on radio, and like we would have done or have been doing in the past. So it's incredibly critical for us to be able to maintain that. But we, as I said before, the customers that we're able to engage with and have that known relationship, they're worth more than those that we can't. And when you're explaining that to an operator, to a franchisee, or to the rest of the business, it's actually quite an easy, compelling story to say. It's like, invest more in this space, then we're going to get a better return on the back of it. But more importantly, it's better for the customer. So if we're able to turn up, and we know you love your Big Mac, and we're working on technology called Ready on Arrival, which is order on your mobile. It's literally as soon as you walk through the doors, that food should be ready and prepared for you. That'll be coming next year, and that that technology plus personalization mean that at some point you might not even need to order through your phone. Walk into your McDonald's and it's there waiting for you. And all the point is that transaction point. That's the behavior, and that is powered by that known customer relationship and that data that we've got. So as much as the boring stuff around the wiring and the restaurants, we've also converged our marketing customer data platform over the last 18 months to be able to power that. And we are right at the start of the journey in that space, as many people are. But I think that's probably, and for the data geek in me, which I am, that's the exciting stuff. Is we've invested in all the hardware, the technology, the touch points. Now it's about making sure we're curating a really strong, creating really strong content to make that experience better and more relevant to customers, more rewarding for customers. So when you see that next year, that's where you'll probably see McDonald's really pushing it, is how we can make that more relevant, rewarding for you.
So I'm just going to have to think of a Big Mac meal, and it's going to be there for me when I walk in.
Yeah, you might not even have to think about it. It might be there already. But that's obviously holy grails at that point and stuff. But certainly the investment on geolocation and others that we've done on that makes that a possibility. And that's absolutely something we're quite excited about. But also we're thinking about that at-home experience is never going to go away. Delivery is huge. So we're looking at things like, we'll see, drone delivery. We're looking at integration in home and voice, car sat-nav systems. We're doing a lot of work on. There is some quite incredible things about to happen over the course of, maybe not in 22, but certainly in 23, 24. So, and generally, not just McDonald's. I think this market, this QSR market, will be leading an awful lot of that because it has to.
Yeah. Yeah, you touched on it earlier. The high street stores, we've talked a lot about drive-through and the new footprints. What of the high street restaurant and how that fits into the offering? Because it's, we're saying that there's not as many people actually going into a restaurant. So, how does that look in the future?
Yeah, so I also look after our high street strategy of the business. So they gave me that last year, which was felt like a bit of a poison chalice about 18 months ago, when obviously the business was kind of really challenged. But we've seen some really strong, encouraging green shoots over that. But McDonald's has to do something about that. Has to be part of that conversation, because we've got 350, what we call high street or in-store restaurants. It's worth about £800 million. It's a big part of our business. So we've got to get that right. So what I think we'll end up getting to will be, we still firmly believe there's a role for restaurants in our high street. Those restaurants have got to work incredibly hard around customer experience and others, like I mentioned before. So get back to being rooted in what makes you feel. Those kind of everyday feel-good moments have to be delivered in restaurants. So we've got to go back to customer experience and service being right at the top of it, not just transactional. We've done a ton of work over the last 18 months we literally have been able to look at every single one of our high street restaurants and put a footfall forecast against every single one of those 350 restaurants. And we've done that work with Telefonica, O2, so we've used mobile cell tower data, all anonymous, of course, to look at patterns 2 years before the pandemic, post-lockdown, to see how those locations have changed and pivoted, to see where footfall looks at. We've overlaid things like, obviously Deloitte have done a lot of work in this space, Springboard, local authority investment, and so on, to predict every restaurant where we see footfall coming back. So we have a good view of which locations are going to recover and are recovering, and we monitor that on a weekly basis, and we're pretty there. And then we've been able to look at how those restaurants have converted. So if we knew if similar restaurants behave very similar to others or look very similar, one restaurant's doing better than the others, we can then overlay things like CSAT, delivery, and others to kind of go, right, okay, let's get into understanding why. So do we need to improve customer experience there? If it's a big delivery volume restaurant, let's increase the kitchen space, let's reduce the amount of dine-in space to make that more efficient. So long and short of it is, I think high streets will have to have a super relevant proposition for that particular requirement, and there'll be some here, be close to transport hubs, close to student communities, close to worker populations. There might be regional town centres or more family orientated, and it's the old 80-20 rule. So 80% of McDonald's core being consistent, and then the 20% is how we can really flex to that specific need for that specific restaurant and make sure we're optimizing a really great journey around that. So I think that's where we'll get to. but we've got to, this is a brand that was built on high street, and we've got to absolutely make sure that we're on that. The last thing I'll say, and kind of on that, would be we're looking at things like flex footprints, so we can, heated lockers might be a thing that we look at. So we literally, go into, scan a locker, don't even leave the restaurant. If that's close to a transport hub, that feels right, but that won't work in a regional town centre potentially. So there's all these kind of things we're looking at, which just flexes that proposition a little bit. But I think technology and digital are going to be right at the heart of that.
So I was going to finish by asking you to describe the restaurant of 10 years' time, but it sounds as if there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all. There's going to be a restaurant that flexes around the needs of the customer in a different environment.
Yeah, I often find it really hard. Obviously, I'm sure everyone's the same in here, to predict what it looks like in 10 years. I wouldn't have predicted what we've seen in the last couple of years, let alone next 10 years. So I think it'd be very foolish to predict it. But despite working in digital, what I really hope that we still retain this kind of this touch feel, this more sensory experience. I think there'll come a point where people will just crave that sociability, that tactileness of visiting a restaurant. So I don't think we will be at a point where all 1,400 of our restaurants feel like really clinical, transactional places that just get your food quickly. I think that'll be a crying shame. Obviously our technology will be there to make sure that that order experience is quicker, faster, hotter. That will be our mantra all the way through it. Our deliveries will be better. There'll be fulfilling delivery will be far quicker than what it is now. So we talk about a half-hour delivery time. That could be 3 minutes in 10 years' time. Who knows? I think we'll get under 20 minutes in 2 years' time. So that will definitely improve. But I hope the restaurant experience is really relevant to that customer proposition, that location. And certainly for some of our restaurant locations on high streets and others that feel tactile, that feel like a really strong customer experience, as much as it is about technology.
Karl, really fascinating journey of McDonald's over the last few years, and I think there's going to be some really interesting things in the future as well. Thanks for taking us on it. Thanks for taking us on your journey. Hope that's given everybody a bit of an insight into how McDonald's has changed and the things that it's considering around digital. And yeah, thanks for coming along today.
A pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.